Welcome to the Pot of Inquiry. Ready for some thought-provoking cerebral whipping and the destruction of ridiculous medical dogma? Want to shift those stale, moldy old paradigms? Well then, don that thinking cap of yours, get down in the cave, and join our host, Dr. Stephen Barrett, for this week's episode. Let's start spelunking.
My guest today is Matthew Gillogly, the founder and CEO of Mavericks Profit Systems. Matt is a seasoned entrepreneur and business strategist who's made it his mission to help physicians escape the tyrannical third-party insurance system. I know you're all going to love hearing about this. In 2014, Matt opened his first cash-based medical practice, and within 18 months, they had 3 locations doing $6.5 million annually. He sold his interest in those clinics in November of 2017. Since that time, Matt has helped hundreds and hundreds of doctors break free from the tyranny of insurance-based healthcare. His clients have added over $200 million of new cash revenues. At Mavericks, the mission is to free 100,000 doctors worldwide from the tyranny of insurance-based care by 2033. So please enjoy this fascinating conversation I have with Matt Gillogly. All right. I'm here with Matthew Gillogly, and I pronounced that correctly, did I not?
Yes, you did. That's
right.
a winner chicken dinner right there, Dr. Barrett.
All right.
56 years, that never happens.
Oh,
but way to go.
All right. So good Irish name. I like it.
Yes.
So thanks
Yes.
for coming on the show.
I'm thrilled to be here, man. I'm looking forward to it and can't wait to see where this takes us.
Well, I think it's going to take us down a really nice rabbit hole. Like I mentioned before we started recording, this is kind of a subject near and dear to my heart. I think that physicians are probably one of the most captivated, beat up populations of humans that are in the free world right now. So let's talk about where you came from to get to this topic today, because I think that your history is important to the audience so they understand that this is where you're coming from.
Yeah. I always start out with, first and foremost, I'm not a doctor, and I know just enough to be dangerous as a doctor. All my friends think I'm a doctor because they'll send me their lab reports going, what should I do? And my answer is always, call your doctor.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
What's this? But I got into medicine by accident. So in 2013, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur since I was 16 years old. I'm 56 at the time of this recording. I was on the road with a friend of mine, and we were in Bakersfield, California. We were at breakfast, and he said, you need to be in the erectile dysfunction business. I almost reached across the table and hit him because, I was 46 at the time. And what do you mean I need to be in the erectile dysfunction business? Right. And he told me about this business model where you advertise on the radio and TV, people come in, you give them an injection, and they get an erection in the office without any stimulation, and then you sell them a package. And I was immediately intrigued. Fast forward about 3 months later, I'm in Birmingham, Alabama, at a clinic. I was there 20 minutes, and I said, I'm in. By January of 2014, I had opened my first clinic. Now, the doctor owned the clinic. I always specify this. We did it legally. I'm in the state of North Carolina. Doctor owned the clinic. They made all the medical decisions. We owned the management company. But I was the CEO and general managing partner of that. And we grew it to 3 locations in 18 months, doing $6.5 million a year. We were doing anywhere between 80 to 100 PRP injections, penile PRP injections for either Peyronie's or venous leakage or erectile dysfunction a month. We were seeing 50 new patients per week per location. So that's 150 new patients between the 3 locations. And we were doing about 80 to 100 pellet insertions a month for hormone replacement therapy. And all we did was men's sexual health. That's all we did. No insurance, never took insurance. And sold my interest in those in November of 2017. And then in 2018, I started working with doctors, going back really to my first love, and that's to coach and consult with people to help them grow their businesses. So that's kind of the quick version. And today I work with doctors all over the world, US, Canada, Australia. We've got Brazil coming on board, a couple of other places. And we help doctors leave insurance to start cash-based practices or grow their existing cash-based practices so that they can have some freedom.
I want to talk about leaving the system. I left the system myself about a year and a half ago. Um, that's a whole topic in and of itself. But before we jump into that, let's talk about some of those countries that you mentioned, because I would think that Brazil, they would be a vastly different market, insurance system. I mean, I would think that there's a lot of discrepancy from one country to another, but I'm not sure about that.
You know, here's the thing is that you have to realize you're selling to the real, let's take Canada, for example. They have a single payer system.
Right.
And, so does England. And I don't have a client in England, but I have a friend of mine that's a cardiologist in England, and he's doing the same thing. And here's the interesting thing about like the single payer systems. Most people are like, oh, we're a single payer system. My patients, they're not going to do it. They're not going to want to come out of pocket for anything. They're going to expect the government to pay for everything. And the reality is in the single payer systems, the more managed the care is by the government, the more desire there is by the patients to have another option. And so I think to answer your question, at the core, humans, I don't care if you're from Brazil, Chile, Cleveland, Canada, wherever, humans want options. Humans want to have a sense of freedom to make choices of what they want to be able to do. And so what's happened zooming back into the American healthcare system, is the American healthcare system has created its own form of a single payer, and they're in the form of insurance companies.
Right.
And they control it. I liken the insurance companies to the head of the 5 families of the New York Mafia. And there's always one family, for years it was a Gambino crime family, or, the Lucchese crime family. And they basically really ran everything, and the other 4 families were really subordinate to them. And if you really think about it, that's what our American healthcare system is when the Affordable Care Act came in, basically they guaranteed the bad debt of the hospitals, so that because they were carrying billions of dollars, now they're flush with all this cash. Consolidation has happened with the hospitals, but at the end of the day, who controls all the money? The insurance companies. And they made $16 billion with a B, $16 billion in 2023. They control everything. They control the pharmaceuticals, they control the hospitals, they control the government, they control everything. And so, at the end of the day, if they could figure out a way to get rid of the doctor, they would. Trust me. They would. If they could figure out a way to get rid of them, they would. They view the doctor as a necessary evil, and they would prefer that you become an unnecessary evil. So,
well, it's clear. It's clear with the way that the metamorphosis over the last 30 years in medicine, it went from a system where you had a very simple soap note. You took care of the patient. You knew where their allergies were. You didn't have to go through this laborious process through these electronic medical records just to find out what they're allergic to. You didn't have to submit all of these pre-authorization requests, all of this nonsense that really delivers nothing to the patient's care or outcome whatsoever. And then on top of that, they reduced reimbursements by maybe 75%. So, I mean, what we were paid for a procedure in 1993, let's say just for an example, it was maybe $1,000 for that surgery. They may pay $250 today. What other system in the economic world has undergone that type of a climate change?
Oh, well, let's take it a bit further. So you have, how many years have you been
in practice?
In podiatry?
Yeah, about 38 years.
Okay, 38 years. So let's think about this. You are paid the exact same amount as someone who is just coming out of residency.
That's correct.
I want you to think about this in any other market in America, in a free market, in a capitalistic free market. Where does that happen? Because if I go to my lawyer and my lawyer has 38 years of experience, I'm going to pay $2,000 an hour. If I want the junior, it's going to be $150 an hour, $250 an hour.
Right.
It's the same thing if I go to my CPA, my accountant, if I go to whatever, pick whatever it is. If I go to somebody that's a personal trainer, they've been doing 38 years, I'm going to pay thousands of dollars for that. It's the only market I know where you are paid the exact same regardless of your experience.
Right.
And so your effort, your training, what you score and what your grades are in school, the type of residency that you get into, the type of training that you do, the fellowships that you do after, none of that matters to your economic well-being. In fact, it actually doesn't even matter to the treatment of your patients because you don't get to make the call anymore as to how your patient is treated.
Right.
And this is the thing that pisses off the patients, by the way. Right. The patients are as pissed off as the doctors are. Sorry if that word offends people, but the patients are 5 times as PO'd. They're ticked. They're furious. And my wife was just telling me about one but yeah, go ahead.
Well, no, what I was going to say is that I don't know when the change occurred, but it was pretty insidious along the way. I mean, it was the slow drip water torture that they did against us as a group. But it was at first very minimal pay, and I'm talking about my own career. All right. So at first it was very simple. Like I mentioned, it was a SOAP note. You sent in your claim, they paid the 80%, and you moved on about business. And then it gradually got to, where you had to get the pre-authorization. And then, oh no, that's not covered for the patient because they haven't had 4 or 5 things that failed yet. When you knew that the thing that you were proffering for that patient would take care of their problem right away. So they built in this false paradigm that they were the providers. You would end up calling some call center and getting somebody, hopefully it was from an American city, but a lot of times it was from India, and you could barely understand. And they're telling you that you can't do this procedure for Mrs. Jones because it's not indicated. It's like, how the hell do you know what's indicated? You've never seen this patient in your life. You're in a cubicle in Bangladesh somewhere, and you're telling me I can't do this for my patient. Very frustrating for the physician.
Yeah. And look, it's equally as frustrating for the patient. And this is where, so let's think about what is the sole purpose of the insurance company? It's to make money.
Make money. Right.
That's the only reason why they exist.
Right.
And how do they make money? What most people don't realize is when you pay them their premiums, every day that they don't send out that money, they're making tens of thousands of dollars on the interest. So they have $100 million sitting in cash, let's just say, in a bank account, and they get what are called overnight funds, right? Like they get interest, right? There's the hold the money thing. Somebody else can explain it better than me. I mean, this is basically how Amazon makes a ton of money, is they collect the money and they wait 30 days before they pay the vendor. Sound familiar?
Yep.
And they make millions of dollars or tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars a year on that float. Okay.
Right.
So the reason why the insurance companies want to drip this along is the longer they can hold on to the money, the more money that they make, which increases their bonuses. And that's what the executives and the whole team are bonused on. That's one of the things is, so I have a very good friend of mine in my neighborhood. He was a chief technology officer of one of the Blues. I will not say which one. And he comes over to my house. We'll have a glass of bourbon. We'll hang out in the backyard, smoke cigars, and he'll go, yeah. He goes, our whole thing was to not pay. We used to have meetings about how can we delay to pay.
Right. Well, and the other thing, I mean, I did an MBA program at Texas Tech for physicians and dentists back in about 2005. It was a phenomenal program because they brought in these experts, former regional CEOs for United Healthcare, and they would talk to you. So they'd bring people from the dark side, and then they'd bring a few people that were originally on the dark side that came over and finally saw the light. And there was one guy that came in, and he was I'll never forget this, but he said basically, so he was a regional CEO for one of the big 5 probably back then. Long story short, he then became a manager for one of the larger hospital systems. And before he became the manager of the hospital system, his company came to him and said, we want you to slash the panel or the reimbursement by 50%. And we want it done in like 3 months. And he said, why don't you just give me 6 months and see what I can do? And he sent out some, managed care letter to, I think it was 803 physicians. And within 20 days or 30 days, most of them had sent everything back, signed, sealed, and delivered, where they just agreed to like a 70% pay cut.
Yeah.
And they didn't even know. I mean, it was like lambs led to the slaughter.
Yeah. And the reason, so here's the reason why this happens. And this, I'm talking in general terms here. I believe the reason why in medical school, they don't give you any business classes, just even one, or talk to you about how money works is because if you figured out how bad of a deal you have, there would be a mass revolt. And I also think that the reason why I hear this from doctors all the time, they're told in med school that they should never discuss money with a patient, that it's beneath them. Well, wait a minute. I'm going to tell you right now as a patient, the only person that I want to discuss care and the cost of that care with is my doctor that I know, like, and trust. To me, the most important people in my life are my CPA, right? My lawyer, my doctor, outside of my wife and my kids, right?
Right.
And my very good friends. But like, if I look at my circle of people, and I'm very blessed, right? I work with great doctors in regenerative therapies and PRP and BMAC and functional medicine, all cash-based, all the great stuff. And I mean, they're on my cell phone. I can text them in a heartbeat and say, hey, I've got this issue.
Right.
And I've got a solution. But that's what the patient wants. And they tell you, oh, well, doc, I've had doctors say to me, well, I was told in med school that I should never discuss money with the patient. And my answer is, why? Who told you that? Well, the professor had been there for 30 years. I go, let me guess. And he died broke. Right?
Yeah.
Like, why? Well, it's beneath us. Beneath you? Who told you that lie? Because I'm going to tell you as a patient, I want my doctor to say, here's what's going to cost you. Here's what this is going to be, blah, blah, blah. Let's figure out the best course of action for you in order to get the best possible resort for what you can afford. Right? Isn't that to me this whole belief system, I tell doctors in the Hippocratic Oath, it says, do no harm. Well, insurance-based care is doing the most harm than anything else. Think about it.
Right.
Like the whole concept of insurance-based care is it certainly isn't in the best interest of the patient. And it certainly doesn't allow the doctor to be able to make the best decision in the interest of the patient. So we're doing a tremendous amount of harm. And so this system, my mission in life is, one, free 100,000 doctors from the tyranny of insurance-based care by the end of 2033. Do that worldwide. And the second thing is that I want doctors to realize how bad they're getting screwed.
Right.
Because our society can't exist in this way anymore.
Well, I think the one thing that the insurance industry has done very well is demonize the end care provider. And, I think there's this misperception by people that physicians really are these just money machines that print inordinate amounts of money. They don't realize that this is really if you're in that insurance world, you send in a claim, you have no idea what they're going to pay you, and you're just at their mercy. Maybe they pay you, 50% that time, and they're all over the map. One company will do this, one will do that, but they all are universal. And it's like the provider's making all of the money. That's the subliminal, or not even subliminal message. I mean, that the providers have been demonized, and I think they're starting to wake up to this. But it's just, the system is tyrannical. And I think your description on that is excellent, but it's so ingrained in our society the way it is. It's going to take a lot to get. It's kind of like trying to get out of cold frozen mud.
Yeah, it is. When you come from generations of, like, say, an abusive family or an alcoholic family. I come from an alcoholic family. You just accept that as just the way it is, right? I had my first taste of alcohol when I was probably 2 or 3, and you just think that that's just the way every family is until you meet other families. You're like, wait, what a minute? You guys don't have wine and beer at every single dinner, and don't crack open your first beer at noon every day. Like, oh, okay. And so, when we can get a doctor to realize, our best doctors are the ones that are burnt out. So we work with a lot of orthopedic surgeons. Okay. So let's use the orthopedic surgeons as an example. When I tell my friends, I play this game with them, I'll go, they're like, well, why would doctors need cash pay? Aren't they killing it? I'm like, okay, so let's play the game. How much do you think a doctor makes for doing an ACL reconstructive surgery? They're like, I don't know, $5,000-$6,000 ago. How about $750? And I said, and that includes the pre-op. That includes 3 months of follow-up. They don't get paid more if they're more talented. And that usually means that they also have to cover a PA or an NP to be there. Right. And they're like, what? I'm like, they make about $22 an hour. They make as much as a receptionist. Okay.
Right.
I said, now let's talk about the OBGYNs. Oh, OBGYNs are killing it. Really? $500 for a vaginal delivery, $600 for a C-section. They have a 17.5-year look back on their malpractice. If that kid goes postal at 17.5, and they find out that they use forceps when they deliver the kid, the doctor's going to get sued. Okay.
Right.
So like, this is what we have to do is we really have to educate the public to a certain degree as to how bad this is. And this is why doctors are leaving because of burnout. And I believe that the hospitals and the insurance companies don't want to do anything about doctor burnout, because if they can get enough doctors to leave, then they can petition the states and say, let us just use PAs and NPs. They're just as good. We have AI now. We don't really need a doctor. We don't need all that expense. Let's cut our expenses by $100,000 or $200,000 per doctor. So there's like, we have to realize that the time is now. We have to make this change now, because if we don't in 5 years, this could be over. You know, they're buying up doctors left and right, and we've got to get in front of this.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, and, you know, almost every new grad coming out of their residency program right now is becoming an employee of the hospital. There's very little people that are going into it. And I think that's one of the things, and I can't speak to the psyche of the general physician population, like the older dogs like me versus the younger folks. But I you know, most of the folks that I know that are in practice and have been in practice for several decades are fiercely independent people. They wanted to do this because they cared about the patient. They loved what they were doing. And I don't think I mean, I know I didn't know what I was signing up for when that happened, because they changed the game. It's like, all right, we're going to go out, we're going to play this game, but then every couple of weeks they'll change the rules to the game because they can. So I don't know if it's the mindset now, but it's almost like every one of the new, folks that are coming out of their residency or fellowship, they're going to the big hospital panels, and the hospitals are buying out practices right and left. They want to control everything. And then all of a sudden, this fiercely independent individual finds themselves as nothing more than an employee, that they have no decisions in even how to render the care, because it's all algorithm driven. You go through your EMR and you have to do all of these things that have no relevance to taking care of that patient whatsoever.
Right.
And then by the time you waste all that time, it's a mad system. But I think you're right. It's either going to implode, or it'll have to undergo some drastic change at some point in time.
We talk to doctors every day. Okay, this is what I do. I work with doctors all over the U.S. and Canada, and some international. And I was down doing a consulting day in Wilmington, North Carolina. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. I went down and spent a day with two new clients, Dr. John Kanab and his partner, Dr. Aurora. They have a pain management clinic, very busy, both seeing like 40 patients a day, 4 days a week. They have, PAs and NPs in there doing treatments and things like that. And Dr. Kanab is having a challenge. The staff is saying, well, gosh, we don't know if this is really the best thing. And John just basically interrupts him and goes, this isn't a choice, folks. I've been a doctor for 28 years. He goes, I'm making less today than I was making 5 years ago. And he said, I will not do in 2 years, one of two things will be. We'll either be fully cash, or I'll be done being a doctor and I'll retire. He said, because I will not do this anymore. He goes, I'm burnt out. He goes, I can't do it anymore.
Right.
And he's a talented doctor, right?
Right.
So here's a guy at 55 who's going to leave instead of sticking around until 70. That hurts our society.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, this is, if we start losing the 50 plus doctors, the age doctors that, are finally at that place where they have the confidence and they really have the reps and the 10,000 hours and all of that. And then we're just stuck with a bunch of kids coming out of residency. And I know they're highly trained in that. I have doctors that are right out of residency to my clients, but that's not good for society.
Right.
Right. I mean,
well, the young need the old to mentor them.
Absolutely. And you're not going to mentor them. You're going to be like, the system's effed.
Right.
Get out of here.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but before you continue with this great conversation, we need to take a quick break to acknowledge this week's sponsor.
I'm constantly exploring new avenues to enhance well-being and address any health concerns. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce you to an exciting supplement called STEM Regen, which I take daily and genuinely believe could revolutionize your health journey as well. STEM Regen stands out as a game changer in the realm of wellness. Crafted from 5 potent plant extracts, it boasts a remarkable ability to stimulate the release of your body's own stem cells from your red bone marrow. Why is this significant? Well, stem cells are the superheroes of our body's natural repair system. They possess the extraordinary capacity to morph into various cell types, aiding in tissue regeneration and repair. As we age, the quantity of circulating stem cells in our system reduces significantly, impairing our body's ability to heal and rejuvenate itself effectively. Stem Regen steps in to counter this decline by kickstarting the release of stem cells into circulation, thereby bolstering your body's innate repair mechanisms. Once released into your bloodstream, these mobilized stem cells actively seek out areas of damage or injury, initiating the healing process. By incorporating Stem Regen into your daily routine, you're essentially empowering your body to tap into its own regenerative prowess more efficiently. I firmly believe that Stem Regen could be a valuable addition to your wellness regimen, especially if you're seeking to fortify overall health and vitality, accelerate tissue repair, or expedite recovery from injury or illness. This first of its kind stem cell mobilizer is changing the game in regenerative medicine. Don't wait to unleash your body's innate healing capabilities. Visit stemregen.co and use the code SBPOD to get a 15% discount off your first order of Stem Regen.
Well, and the problem is that, you can be the most highly trained specialist coming from the highest ranked program in whatever specialty it is. And you really don't know squat until you've been beaten up by the clinical world and have had some experience thrown at you. And that, there's just no way to get around that. People will say, well, yeah, I was extremely well trained, but you haven't been on the battlefield. You may know all of the war history and all of these great theories on how to do this, but until you get out there and you're beaten up in the trenches of that battle, you have no idea.
I joke, I want my doctors, lawyers, accountants, and pilots to all have gray hair.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. My residency director told me, he goes, always listen to gray hair.
Yes. Yeah.
And it proved pretty true, because they've lived it. So how do you take let's talk about the process. We all agree it's a tyrannical system. And if you're going to survive and not succumb to massive burnout and just becoming some kind of an automaton working for the hospital, how do you get out of this wretched system?
Yeah. Well, it starts, all desires to make change come from that. You reach that groundswell of desire. You have to be at a place like, I can't continue down this path. I don't like what that future is. So there's got to be a better way, right? So if you're at that place where you're like, look, I can't do this for another 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, because I'll have a heart attack, or my kids will hate me, or my wife will divorce me and sleep with the pool boy, or whatever, or my husband will leave me, or whatever. Don't want to eliminate the female doctors. And so it has to start from there. You have to reach this point where like you're willing to give up. And a lot of the doctors that work in the system, the hospital system, they have golden handcuffs, right? Because of RVUs and things like that. They're making $500,000, $750,000. And they just think, well, I can just put up a little bit longer. But the reality is it's never going to get any better. What's happening now is we have a doctor that was making $1.5 million a year with RVUs, surgeon.
Right.
And they came to him and they were renegotiating his contract. And basically they were going to cut his RVUs in half, and he was going to make $750,000. He was chief of surgery. And he's like, to hell with you guys. That was his break point. So once you have that break point, let's just start with the doctor who's leaving the system. They don't have a list of patients or anything like that. The key to anything is to understand that any skill can be learned. Okay. Now, I have 7 years of college. I have 1 degree. It's in marketing. I'm a former golf professional. Okay. So I ran private clubs. I went to school for professional golf management. If I can sit in the back of the room at these conferences and I can understand and learn things about the human body and look at an ultrasound and see things and look at a blood panel and understand things at a very basic level. I'm not suggesting I can do what you do, Stephen. Like, I'm not going to suggest that at all. But if I can understand that, if I can do that, and I had a 2.3 grade point average in college, okay? My ACT and SAT scores like were probably half of what most of the doctors were. So I'm not one of those like book smart kind of people. If I can do that and I can learn about medicine, you can learn the fundamentals of business. Anybody can learn the fundamentals of business. It has to start with doctors tell me, oh, well, I'm not very good at business. I'm like, bull. Nobody's ever shown you how easy business is. Okay. So once you understand that there is a fundamental to business, just like there is to the human body, just like there is to medicine. And if you're willing to do a little bit, not even anywhere near as much work as you have to do in med school and residency and fellowships and things like that, then you can learn the fundamentals of business. Okay. So you've got to change kind of that inner dialogue and that belief system, because anybody can learn the fundamentals of business. This is what we teach our doctors. And when you do that, then you can very easily go start a practice. You can very easily discover how to get people to pay premium prices and all of that. And I'll walk through some of that here in just a little bit. But you have to really just come from that place of I've had enough and I can learn this. And if you can get to those two places, then your chances for improvement and your chances for success increase by tenfold.
So is there, I mean, if you have somebody that's coming out of a hospital system that doesn't have any, book of business, for lack of you would never hear that term necessarily in medicine, but that's a business term that everybody's familiar with. But if you don't have this book of business and you're coming from a hospital, that's got to be much more difficult or different process than somebody who has maybe been in the private practice arena for a longer period of time. So I'm sure you have to be somewhat malleable in how you're doing this for different, because physician A isn't the same as physician B, is what I'm trying to.
Yeah. So so that's a great question. Let's take a look at physician A and physician B. Physician A is coming out of the system, meaning the hospital system. They don't have a book of business. Physician B is somebody that has their own practice and they have a list of patients. Their challenges are different, but they're equally as challenging. Okay. So let's take the doctor that's coming out of the big hospital system. It's actually easier sometimes for them to start because they can actually do it part-time. You have to remember there's a huge demand for doctors because of burnout via COVID. And I've had a number of my doctors go from working 5 days down to 3 days, and maybe their income gets cut by 20%, but they just tell the hospital, we're not going to work that many hours anymore. And so you can still have this really good income coming in while you do this on the side. I have probably about 25 to 30% of my client base are in that category. They are starting from square one. And so in that process, what we do is we show them how to, you can basically sublet space from like a med spa. It depends on what you're doing, right? So let's just talk about in the context of regenerative, we're doing injections and things like that.
Right.
You're going to need more tools. You're going to need an ultrasound. You're going to need some training, all of that. But the reality is that I have a doctor in Philadelphia. That's what he's doing. He's working 3 days a week in the hospital. He's making probably $250,000 a year, $300,000 a year. And the other two to 3 days a week, he's getting his practice up and going, and he's doing about $25,000 to $30,000 a month. Now he's subletting space. His expenses are really, really low. He's gone and gotten a bunch of training. He's mentoring with some of our higher level doctors about doing regenerative. And Mark will, I don't want to give his last name, but I bet Mark will be doing 6 figures a month within 12 months because he's just doing the basic work. Let's take a look at Dr. B over here. And they're the ones that own the practice. They actually have the easiest transition, but they have the hardest mental leap. Okay. So if I own my own practice, let's take a pain management doctor. Okay. Pain management and orthopods are the two big ones that we have. Okay. That move into regen. But let's use the pain management. Their biggest problem is they're so busy seeing patients because they have to see 60 patients a day in order to make ends meet and cover payroll that they don't have any time and energy left to do the work. Okay. Same thing with the orthopedic doctors. They're doing surgery 2 to 3 days a week. They're doing call, right? Actually, one of the first things we always try to do is we work to get a doctor to stop doing call. Once they do that, their business skyrockets because they have all this extra time and energy, right? They're not worn out. Right. But that doctor who owns a practice, what they have that they don't realize is they have an existing book of business, and that's their existing patient base. And every one of my doctors says, Matt, you don't know my client base. We've offered cash services before to them and they won't pay. And my answer is, you just haven't offered it to them in the right way. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at numbers. So let's say that let's make the math easy. Let's say I have 1,000 patient files. I know that 85%, 850 of those patients are not a candidate for cash-based procedures. In the regenerative, maybe they're too far gone, or maybe they, they're not a candidate medically, or whatever the issue is, or, they really don't want that. They're just happy doing their nerve blocks or whatever, cortisone shots or whatever it is, or opioids or whatever. Okay.
Right.
But 150, 10 to 15%, 100 to 150 of those patients want another option. Nobody's ever presented it to them in a way that makes it compelling.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right.
And those patients will pay, on average, this is going to shock your clients, on the low end, $5,000 for a cash-based procedure. I have doctors that are charging upwards of $20,000 to $25,000 for cash-based procedures, and they have client bases that are 80% Medicare or Medicaid. And the Medicare and Medicaid patients will pay. You want to know why? Because they're as pissed off as you are at the system.
Well,
Okay?
and I think the other motivator is that they've gone to 10 other people, and that 3-minute office visit at those 10 other physicians, they can't get to the problem. They can't get the problem taken care of it the way that the regular mainstream is working right now.
Yeah. So one of their favorite places with doctors to make this transition into regenerative is, let's go back to the concept of the Hippocratic Oath of do no harm. And let's attach that to the concept of doing corticosteroid shots. Now, we all know that the corticosteroid shot is bad for the patient.
Yep.
We are doing more harm by injecting that into the patient than by doing nothing. Why? Because it weakens the ligament, right? Okay.
Yep.
Now, look, I'm a guy with a 2.3 grade point average in college and 7 years of college and a degree in marketing, and I can even understand that. Okay.
Right.
So we're actually violating the oath that you took in med school to do no harm. Why? Because that's just what we're told to do by the insurance provider, or you're told what to do by the insurance provider. But that's doing more harm. So what we do is we can teach our doctors how to say, look, we're not offering that anymore. Let me show you a better option that can actually provide life to that ligament.
Right.
Make it more supple, right? Do all the things that, I hate to use the word regrow. I get it. And regenerate, but that's essentially what we're doing. And so the patient is like, well, yeah. Now here's the other thing. The numbers just came out about 3 weeks ago. The average 60% of Americans have what's considered a quality healthcare plan, corporate plan, whatever. But their average out-of-pocket expense after premiums is $18,500 for 2024. That's what it's going to be. That's up from $12,500 in 2024. 2025, it's going to be $18,500. So they're paying the money anyway, and they are sick and tired of coming in for corticosteroid shots that don't work and last 4 weeks.
Right.
And they can only get 3 a year, 4 a year, So, I mean, they want choices. They want options.
Right.
So that doctor B that has a list of patients, we can show them very easily how to convert. And that's one example. But there's plenty of others. And it's, like I said, we're doing it all over the country. So it's fun work too.
Well, and there's something that we haven't mentioned, and it's the quality of life. And when you leave that tyrannical system, your quality of life goes up exponential. You can't even, it's hard to quantify it because, but it's there. You have this tremendous feeling of liberation. You can actually dedicate the time to taking care of the patient, to facilitate what they need and all of this, rather than speaking to some idiot at a 1-800 number that you waited 20 minutes to get an answer if you can get their MRI approved. I mean, it's just really silly system. But I think what happens is that, at least in my case, I feel more energetic and more passionate about what I'm doing now than ever before, because I've got the shackles off of me. And that's given me more energy to dedicate to the folks that are willing to pay for this. So they end up getting even something a lot better, but it's just, they have to have the right psychology. It's not a third party, somebody paying over here, Yeah,
you get paid before you do the procedure versus after in cash. Right. You can charge what you're worth, which means you can make more money. You can see less patients, so you get to spend more time. My doctors love it. They're like, yeah, I spent 45 minutes with a patient today. Like, they'll see, Stephen, they'll see, you're experiencing it, they'll see 6 patients in a day.
Yeah. And and that's a full day.
And they're happy as heck, right?
Right.
They're like, oh my God, I got to spend time with my patient and really like talk about all the different scenarios and like really just administer care to them, right?
Well,
And
and the one thing that people don't get is that there is a tremendous value in, let's call it, the physician-patient bedside manner relationship. And to have the ability to really understand what a patient is doing, how their life is going, how that impacts their condition and impacts your treatment plan. There's no way you can do that in a traditional system. And so the level of interconnectedness with you and your patient is just exponentially higher, orders of magnitude higher than in the traditional type of practice, because you can't do it.
Right. After a year, within a year of working with us, these are the average numbers. My doctors are doing $150,000 a month in cash services. Okay. They're no longer taking call. They usually give up call within 90 days. That's one of the first things we have them do. They've usually jettisoned somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 to 70 or 60 to 80% of their insurance providers. In the regenerative space, we actually have them keep some insurance providers because it's actually free lead gen. We're just using them for the office visit. We don't use them for anything else. And they're seeing patients 3 days a week. Okay. And our average doctor within a year is taking 2 weeks off of time every 8 to 10 weeks. So I have a doctor of mine who's been with me for a year and a half. He and his wife just got back from a 2-week vacation in Bali.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yep.
And they, like Josh will tell you that if he hadn't have found us, he would have quit. He'd be living on a beach in Mexico selling sandals. Right. I mean,
Right.
Dr. Ariana Demir, she doesn't mind if I use her name, Dr. Demir, who's in Sonora, California, well-trained orthopedic surgeon, literally walked out in the middle of a busy day and said, I'm not coming back. And today she's in Croatia at the time of this, and she's speaking at an event, and she's training doctors all over the world about how to do cash practice. She's a very close personal friend of mine. We do a lot of business together. She came to our program. We do a lot of seminars together. She's a phenomenal physician, and she's a phenomenal educator. And so this isn't just a case in the United States. I mean, this is doctors all over the world.
Right.
And, the thing is you didn't get into medicine because you wanted to work 20-hour days and get divorced.
No, that's pretty true.
Right.
Right.
Right. I mean, you got into medicine? Why? Because why'd you become a doctor?
Well, I just always knew. I mean, it was something that it was an
intent. I had $1 every time I heard that. I'd be a rich man. I just knew.
Yeah. But I mean, it was like, I don't know. I mean, I think that's what God intended me to do. And I loved it. I still love it. Thankfully, I changed my paradigm to, get out of the tyranny. But I think the other thing that, really speaks to this is that this is an unusual business. All right. This is not a business where you're selling coffee and you can just close that store at 5 p.m. These patients need to have care, and you're still thinking about that patient at 8 o'clock at night when you're, so it's an industry that there's nothing like it because of your responsibilities think about the responsibility that you have when a patient allows you to make an incision on them. I mean, it's hard to put the seriousness and all of the things that become incumbent to you to take care of these people and get, it's never going to be 9 to 5. Let me put it that way.
No, it never will.
So,
hey, look, I've only experienced it just from, in the erectile dysfunction clinics, or we would do hormones or whatever. And when the patient would come back and they'd have tears in their eyes and they would give me a hug, I'm like, I'm not the doctor. I just wear a suit, right? Like,
right.
But like, I can only imagine what that feels like when you fix somebody's foot that they couldn't walk without pain and now they're walking without pain. I just can't imagine the satisfaction that you get, Stephen. I just can't.
Well, it's truly a spiritual thing that when you feel that, And that's really why we do what we do. Yeah, we need to be paid just like everybody else. We have to pay our staff and rent and all of these things. But you talk to the people that I think are the real bona fide providers, they'll tell you that, yes, I like to be reimbursed for what I do, but the ultimate reimbursement is saving that person's life, changing their life in a very impactful way. I mean, that's really what it really comes down to.
Yeah.
So,
but the best way to do that is outside of the insurance system, right?
Exactly.
You have to get the training to get out of the insurance system because, you're experiencing it now that you no longer have to deal with the knuckleheads in the insurance companies. I would imagine your love of being a doctor has gone through the roof again.
Oh yeah. Tremendous. I mean, for me, it was to the point where, I was it was either I do this or I just quit, and just ride my tractor. That's all I wanted to do.
Yeah, but we need you in medicine. With all those 36 years, right? Is that what you said? We need those 36 years because you got to raise up the next generation, right?
Well, that's the whole thing too. But if you get out of a bad situation and then you're allowed to really do what you were trained to do, it just changes the whole recipe gets changed. And so I think now, I want to wrap up because I want people to be able to, because I know there's a lot of physicians that are listening to this that are in this process, this mental struggle right now. How do they get a hold of you? Tell us about the program how you're helping. Because I looked at your website and you have kind of almost like a fellowship is the way it looked.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yep.
So tell us about that, Matt.
So the company is Mavericks, and I'll spell it for you. It's MAVRIX. So it's mavericksprofitsystem.com. And our mission, as we said, is to free 100,000 doctors by the end of 2033 worldwide in the tyranny of insurance-based care. So how do we do that? Well, one, everybody who's listening, if you go to that site up on the top of the page, you will see a link where you can get my book, The Anatomy of a Seven-Figure Medical Practice. It's a physical book. We ship it to you. We ask you to pay $7.95 for shipping and handling, but we'll ship it to you along with a bunch of free resources. That is the same model. In there is what we call our stairway system. That is the system that we use to grow practices. It's the exact same system that I used to scale my practices in 2014 to those 3 locations. It's the same system that my doctors used. In fact, I'm not ready to announce it completely, but we're getting ready to open another. I'm going to have ownership in another. I still own interest in clinics, but I'm going to be creating a clinic here in Charlotte. It's kind of a business incubator and medical incubator. But that's the exact same system. So you can get that book for free. You can also book a phone call with one of our ambassadors. It's called a discovery call. And on that, we can talk to you about your particular situation. We have a program. It's an annual program, and it's called Business Mastery Fellowship. And we created it specifically. We realized, hey, doctors, when they want to get additional training, what do? They do a fellowship. You want to get a fellowship in whatever, left ankles or whatever you want to do, right? Knees, whatever. And so the Business Mastery Fellowship is exactly that. It's a year-long program, and we teach you the fundamentals of growing your practice, and we're right there with you. It's a community of other doctors all over the world that are doing the same thing. But the most important thing is start with the book. We also have a podcast called The Practice Profit System, where every show is about 10 minutes in length. We have a bunch of other free resources, but if you go to the site, you ask for the book, that's going to be the best place for everybody to start. And then from there, look, take your time in getting to know us. We're not going anywhere. There's no high pressure sales and things like that. Some of you want to get to, know us a little bit more. And we have testimonials from doctors on there, doctors that have started from square one, doctors that I have some doctors now that are doing $10 million a year in cash. And that's just within a 3-year period. So a lot of great resources for you. And again, it's Mavericks, MAVRIX Profit System. Profit and system are singular. So mavericksprofitsystem.com.
I'll put that link in the show notes as well. So
yeah, that'd be great.
Oh, well, I think this was great because right now I think is the perfect storm with all of the different things that are happening in third-party insurance. And I think there's a lot of people that are starting to wake up and realize maybe this isn't such a good place that I'm in right now, and maybe I need to start making a change. So thank you for your insight, and I look forward to learning more. And I'm going to go get the book from your website. So
I'll make sure Cheryl sends you one if she didn't already.
Okay.
I think she did, but I'll make sure she does.
Okay, great. Matt, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
You guys, Dean. Appreciate it.
All right. Bye-bye.
Having neuropathy pain? Get relief at U.S. Neuropathy Centers. If you're suffering from neuropathy symptoms like numbness, tingling, or burning pain in your feet, you're not alone. Over 20 million Americans are impacted by this condition. At U.S. Neuropathy Centers, we specialize in using cutting-edge, non-surgical and surgical treatments to reduce neuropathy pain and restore nerve function. Our protocols combine metabolic support, neurovascular therapy, and regenerative medicine, an approach that gets results many times when others fail. Don't let neuropathy keep you from living your best life. Take the first step and call U.S. Neuropathy Centers today. 404-228-9892 or visit our website at nervetx.com.
I hope you all enjoyed today's show and got some truly empowering knowledge out of it. You can always follow up on anything we talked about in the show notes found at our website, podofinquiry.com. If you think you might have tickled just a few neurons inside that cerebral cortex, please spread the word to your friends and colleagues and tell them that they need to get spelunking. Also, if you can take a minute to leave a review on your podcast provider of choice, and especially Apple Podcasts, that would greatly help the show and be so appreciated, provided it's positive. And if not, then just keep your pie hole shut and stay down in that cave. Let's keep spelunking.
This podcast is designed for informational purposes only and does not constitute any medical or surgical consulting advice or imply a development of any physician-patient relationship. The opinions of guests who are featured on the show are not necessarily the opinions of Dr. Barrett or the production team. This podcast is owned solely by Barrett Medical and Surgical Media, LLC. While the show is highly oriented for physicians and healthcare providers, anyone interested in the improvement of human performance and understanding will find this a welcome goblet to sip from, or guzzle. However, no representation or warranties are made in any way whatsoever on this podcast for any products, techniques, or other things discussed. Invited guests are not vetted by the Pod of Inquiry for their qualifications and may have a direct or indirect financial interest in what they present and discuss on the show. The Pod of Inquiry disclaims any responsibility from anything taken from the show and used personally or professionally. It is a responsibility of the listener to perform their own due diligence prior to the implementation of any ideas, products, techniques, or anything talked about on the show.